secures the NPP flag bearership. Meanwhile, the poll predicts a 2024 election win for John Mahama.
President Mahama, to the extent that he is interested, will become the candidate of the NDC in 2024. You can do an assessment of his performance vis-a-vis anybody that the NPP brings, whether it's Bawumia or Alafi. But as for the fact that the NPP will lose, it is cast in stone based on their own performance.
And also coming up this afternoon on 3FM's First Take.
We do not agree. Because where would the students get the money from? If you are saying you are going to give them breakfast and lunch, where would they get supper? If you are giving them only lunch, where would they get breakfast and supper? So from A, they would have to feed themselves. Where would they get the money from? This is the question. Because allowances have not been paid. The situation needs urgent solution.
Well, the new Patriotic Party government's promise to provide allowances to teacher trainees has backfired as economic challenges cause principals of colleges of education to direct teacher trainee colleges to begin catering for their own feeding. We'll bring you the details of that here as well. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dzifa Gbeho-Bampoh. Thank you very much for making some time to be with us here on 3FM's First Take. We are also streaming live on social media. On our Facebook page is 3FM 92.7. Now, coming back on the heels of a much publicized and much discussed Economist Intelligence Unit report, a new opinion poll about who leads the NPP as flag bearer has revealed some surprises, as Alan Tremanteng, who is currently the trade minister, has been put ahead of what is seeming a popular vice president, Dr. Bawumia. Now, the poll by the Global Info Analytics took a sample size of more than 5,000 people. It also looked at a sample size of 34 constituencies that were previously selected as part of its initial first tracking poll to establish a polling trend. And then they added an additional 34 constituencies selected via random sampling. Now, the previous constituencies polled in January were excluded prior to the running of the random simulation model to select the constituency. So it gives the remaining 241 constituencies an equal chance of selection. So that's the details of the way the Global Info Analytics undertook their research surveys, called methodology. So now the research revealed a number of interesting things. It also revealed that whether the NPP puts Alan Tremanteng or puts Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia as flag bearer, they will both be beaten by the NDC's John Mahama. So they predict a 2024 win for the NDC with a candidate, John Mahama. They didn't put any other candidate as part of their poll. Now, this is slightly different from what the Economist Intelligence Unit put out yesterday, where they point to the fact that the NDC will win a 2024 election. However, it can only do that convincingly with a new candidate, a position that is disagreed with by the NDC. Now, this national tracking poll dated 20th April 2022 also takes a look at different things. For instance, they talk about, do you approve or disapprove of the performance of the president? It gives a percentage. It also asks questions such as what floating voters think of the performance of the president. It also asks questions about whether we think the country is headed in the right or wrong direction, and others. So, but for the purposes of this conversation, we're looking at the bits that have to do with the election of a flag bearer for the NPP, and then of course that of the NDC. So I'm joined by Dr. Kabiru Mahama. He is an economic policy analyst at the Office of the Vice President, and we also have Dr. Kobi Mensah, who also joins us via Zoom. And Dr. Kobe Mensah will be giving us the perspective from the Alan Tremantin camp. Gentlemen, good afternoon and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Dzifa Gbeho-Bampoh.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. So let me take a look at what the poll says in respect of Alan Tremantin and also in respect of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. My colleague, Dennis Wedam-Pabere, who is with our news planning department, has details of that. So, Dennis, tell us, what does the National Tracking Poll, which is the second being organized by the Global Info Analytics, say about Alan Tremantin and also Dr. Bawumia for an MPP primary?
So, per the data that we have, it shows that Alan Tremantin is overtaking Bawumia as the likely candidate to represent the party should there be an election to choose a flag bearer today. And this is because from the data that we have, as of January 2022, Bawumia had a percentage of 39.7% and Alan had 28.14%, which means that as at the time, Bawumia was ahead of Alan. But by the end of the first quarter, Bawumia got 33.2 and then Alan got 35.5. So it means that by the end of the first quarter, Alan has made progress of 7.36%, and then Bawumia dropped by negative 6.5%, and it puts Alan ahead of Bawumia as it stands.
And are there any reasons given for the change?
Yes, so when you look, not necessarily, but before they even got to this part, there had been other questions that have been asked the respondents as to who they trust can build infrastructure in the country, who they think can better manage the educational system, who they think can create more jobs. But when you look at those responses, it's mixed. In some instances, you'd find Bawumia prevail over Alan. Then in some instances, you find, but they've not ascribed any specific reasons for the change in the, who becomes the flag bearer.
Okay, so if we look at, I think, page 7 of the research, the question there is, who do you best trust to manage the economy? That is, if John Mahama, Dr. Bawumia, Alan Tremantin, or someone else were to be our leader. And 46% goes to John Mahama. But if you look at the Dr. Bawumia and Alan Tremantin percentage, Dr. Bawumia gets 26.6% ahead of Alan Tremantin, who gets 15.3%. That's about who best to manage the economy.
Exactly so.
Good. And then who best do you trust to create jobs?
Yes.
John Mahama is 46%, but fine. What we are looking at is what Dr. Bawumia polls and what Alan Tremantin polls. In this instance, Dr. Bawumia is ahead with 23.6%. Alan comes in with 19.34%.
Yes.
Okay. And then education, it's a similar trend as well. And
so I think when it comes to those
infrastructure,
specifics, you would find Bawumia having more votes, as in more percentage over Alan.
Yes.
But then when you now come to who the voters think that can represent the party in the election, it's now changing.
Yeah, so that is the delegate's choice.
The delegate's choice, yes.
That is the delegate's choice.
Exactly.
All right.
So.
But the other constant figure, as we've seen, is John Mahama.
Yeah.
They don't put any other individual, either Dr. Dufour, they don't put Kojo Bonsu or anybody else. They just pitch Mr. Mahama against Mr. Tremantin and Dr. Bawumia.
Yes, and that's because when they were doing the polls for the NDC side, you would notice that Mahama had an overwhelming majority. So, for instance, by the beginning of the year, Mahama had 53%. Then the next person was Dr. Kwabena Dufour, who had 15%. Kojo Bonsu, they didn't indicate then. And then they indicated something like someone else to say that maybe someone else can just spring up. Now, by the end of the first quarter, Mahama increased his 53% to 57%, and then Dr. Dufour dropped to 12%. So, in all fairness, if you are making a comparison, this is too much a gap that you'd want to consider a second option. So, I guess that's the reason they are pitching John Mahama against. When you look at the numbers between Bawumia and then Alan, it's quite competitive. So they are using the two of them to do the analysis.
Okay, so the numbers are close.
Yes.
All right. So now we can bring in our two, analysts from both sides. Let me start with you, Dr. Kobi Mensah. Your thoughts on what the poll has said. Okay, somehow it seems like I'm not getting Dr. Mensah. I'm getting music. Let me start with you, Dr. Mahama. So, Dr. Mahama, what are your thoughts about what the poll has put out?
All right, thank you very much, Dzifa, and good afternoon to your listeners. I think that it's quite, I just want to start blunt that it's quite unfortunate that we are invited to discuss we are given an kind of impromptu, a kind of official approval for that matter, for a research that has very technical flaws, and a research that analysis you cannot rely on based on the tenets of research. I'm a researcher. I have done research all my life. I did research for my master's. I did research for my PhD. And for a Ghanaian public to be presented with such a content to form the basis for national analysis is quite unfortunate. And I'll tell you why. One, the sample size. A population of 8 million people. You are using a confidence level of 99%, which will translate to a Z-score of 2.576. You don't know the total number of voters as we are standing now. So you will assume a standard deviation of 0.5. Will give you a minimum of 16,000 respondents, not 5,000 respondents. So, and such a research is presented for us to discuss. I mean, should we even give it the necessary attention? Because the minimum you should start with for such indicators, because they have mentioned that they are using 99% level of confidence, using the Andrew Fisher's formula for sample size determination. The minimum you should have is 16,000. In fact, 16,500 respondents. Now we are suffering with 5,000 respondents of a population, and we are asked to discuss the results. That is one technical flaw. A second technical flaw: you've gone in your sample, and majority of your respondents are either they are NDC people from their own results, and you want that to be the basis for the determination of who becomes the presidential candidate for the MPP. You don't expect to get the right result, because from the whole research, they are telling us that of their respondents, majority of them were affiliated to the NDC. And we are presented with the results from that particular survey to be the basis for who becomes the MPP's presidential candidate. Secondly, you are analyzing the performance of candidates. Your correspondent just mentioned that there was overwhelming majority for John Mahama compared to Bawumia and Alan. Look, you have candidates, about 10 candidates people were to select from in the case of MPP. And you have about 5 people were supposed to select from. Assuming that the MPP were also about 5 candidates, you would have probably expected a different pattern. Now we are asked to interrogate such a skewed sampling size. Again, the research itself has mentioned that they use a convenient sampling of 34 constituencies, which is almost half of the sample target constituency. Once convenient sampling is used, the issue of randomness is thrown to the dust. So you cannot have a fair and balanced and a view that reflects the minds of the general population of Ghanaians. That is one at the technical flaw with this particular research that we have been invited to interrogate. Again, you have a sample that is putting John Mahama, in terms of management of the economy, against Bawumia, and against Alan Chamanti. And you've not done that for the case of John Mahama before and the other contenders. And we are presented with such a research to interrogate. So looking at this particular research, just like the predecessor, I did not even agree to the previous research that was carried by this particular data info analytics group, because there are technical flaws, there are procedural inaccuracies, there are fundamental flaws which basic first year research students would not even comment. when conducting a research of this nature. And I think that we should not even be giving the research the oxygen it deserves. The publicity that media has, like you, have given to this research is quite unfortunate, because it's just an imprimatur an official approval of what has been done, which has not met basic research. For instance, even if they were going to rely on this particular sample, one would have expected that they control for the sample size variation. They have not done that. They have just thrown descriptive statistics. From what they have just thrown, and then put it to the Ghanaian public to discuss, without accounting for any sampling bias, without accounting for any differences. These are the problems that we have about this particular research, that I don't think that it deserves the time. In fact, with all due respect, it deserves the time we are giving it.
All right. So let me hear from Dr. Kobi-Mensah. Dr. Kobi-Mensah, since you are also a researcher, do you share in the critique put forward by Dr. Gbeho? Hello, Dr. Kobi-Mensah. Okay, seems like we have a hitch with Dr. Kobi-Mensah's Zoom, and we'll try and rectify that. So, Dr. Gbeho, nonetheless, in spite of the fact that you complain that the samples chosen are overwhelmingly NDC people, that's not the sense I get. The sense I get is that he chose individuals from different constituencies. He chose individuals who may lean to the NDC or the NPP. However, because the NDC does not have other competitors in this entire survey, it may look like they are all leaning towards the NPP, but towards the NDC, I beg your pardon, towards John Mahama. So let's look at what is being said in terms of Dr. Bawumia and Alan Tremantin. The numbers look very close, and based on even the data the person presents, Dr. Bawumia seemed to be ahead. It's only in the last quarter that things seem to have changed.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, that, with this particular question, you are just forcing me to comment on something that, for instance, the data shows that 37.8% of the respondents were affiliated to the NDC, 2.4 CPP, 0.49 PNC, 0.76 PPP, 10.6%, the free voter, and the other political party, 99%. 35% of the respondents said they were NPP people. Well, now let's come back to the issue of Bawumia versus Alan Tremantin. See, the contest that is going to come out between between Bawumia and Alan Tremantin is going to be a contest that's going to be determined by the delegates of the NPP, right? Now,
yes,
to get the views of who will come out as the candidate is to sample the views of the delegates. But if I were an NDC person, you are asking me between Bawumia and Alan Tremantin, I'll choose Alan Tremantin because I'll have my reason why I'm choosing Alan Tremantin. If I were to be an MPP person, you ask me between John Mahama and Dufour, I will choose John Mahama because I know the reason why I will choose John Mahama. And this is the data we are being analyzed, or we are analyzing, and we are asked to comment on. No NDC member in all fairness will tell you that when I'm given opportunity between Alan Tremantin and John Mahama, and Bawumia, I'll choose Bawumia. We all know that for a fact. Okay, no MPP person will choose Dufour over John Mahama because several other research that probably the MPP also believe in, the IEA that you just referred to with its international credibility. Ben Epson has also come up with some research. Other people even have some issues with some of the research that was done by Ben Epson because of issue, of course. Research is not something that someone can just sit on the table and do. All right, but with all these factors in, the person will choose your mama if he's an MPP person. So the result that we are having cannot be the result MPP, Alan Tremantin himself, or the people in Alan Tremantin will not even be happy with this particular result because we are dealing with an electoral college. And now you are bringing the general population to say that they should determine who will become the presidential candidate, who is leading, who will be doing injustice to the topic.
All right, but in terms of the 4 people or the 3 people that were put ahead, certainly if we are voting, it is the general public who will vote on whether it's John Mahama or if it's Bawumia or Alan. I agree with you when you say that the Electoral College has not been formed. We don't know who the delegates are. So using a sample that does not pick from the group that are delegates, that would be flawed. But if we are to decide that, okay, these are the 3 top contenders for potential president, Ghanaians, who of these 3 people will you choose? That can't be wrong.
I mean, so if you are, so that aspect to some extent, I would agree with you. And let me explain why I agree with you. If you are presenting 4 candidates, 3 candidates, 2 of them are MPP members, 1 is an NDC person, the NDC members are likely to have advantage. In the first place, their sample size is more. 2, you have 2 MPP people there, and you share votes. So that is a very fatal error that we cannot even entertain. That is one. Now, if we have head of one, John Mahama versus Bawumia, or Bawumia versus John Mahama versus Alan Chiramantin, there we will have some semblance of accuracy. And that semblance of accuracy comes into the extent that we control for the high number of NDC people who are in that particular sample. 2, we control for the high number of other parties. And for instance, the affiliation or the likely affiliation of these particular other parties. If we don't control for these particular differences, we will be having wrong results.
Okay.
So that is what I'm saying, that even if we take Alan Chiramantin versus John Mahama, we take Bawumia versus John Mahama, in order to understand whether the result is even accurate, we need to control for the high number of NDC people who are in the sample. We need to control for the other parties who are in the sample to understand the real situation of who they will vote for. IEA has done some research. They have put they put the NDC in the lead in that particular their prediction. There are issues they explain, and they also even accounted for John Mahama's factor in that particular survey. You see, so all these things, when we are into interrogate, as a researcher myself, I have to analyze the issues in that particular context. I will not be drawn to the figures of who is leading or who is behind. I want to interrogate what was the methodology the researcher used. Was the methodology very flawed, or it was a methodology that is being tested and fine and can stand the rigors of analytical processes? I will ask myself, if that is so, then I'll then proceed to answer the question or the finding of the research. But without this particular flaw, there's not even basis, Dzifa, to even talk about the findings.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabero. Let's now speak with Dr. Kobi Mensah. Miss introduced him. He's a political communicator and analyst. He's also a specialist in marketing, which he lectures at the University of Ghana Business School. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Mensah. Sorry, we lost you on the Zoom. Hope you can hear us now. Okay, looks like we're having challenges still with Dr. Mensah's Zoom line. We'll try and correct that and get him on the phone instead, since that's not working very well. So let me come to you, Dennis. So what do you make of Dr. Kabero's questions? So he raises genuine issues. Yes, the NPP is yet to form its electoral college, which will consist of the delegates who will make a final decision on whether it's Dr. Bawumia or Alan Chiramantin. So asking other people who may not potentially be delegates may then be flawed.
Yes, so to some extent I agree with him when he raises questions about the sampling, the methodology and things like that. But on that particular one, to suggest that somebody necessarily must be a part of the electoral college before the person can be assessed for a poll purpose, I don't agree with him. Reason being that as long as the person qualifies to be a voter, for the fact that this is a poll, the intention is just to gauge the person's mind. Say, if we are to vote today between this person and that person, who will you go for? I can understand and I agree with him if you say that already maybe the people who were chosen belong to a certain party and they identify as such. That may affect the results. On that score, I agree. But the bit about the Electoral College having been formed yet is the reason they call it election polls. They are not saying it is what it is. The other thing he also raises, which I agree with him, is the fact that when you look at the internal contest for the MPP, you'd find that the candidates are few. I think they put up only 4 people. That's
they put up Dr. Bawumia.
No, I mean, sorry, the NDC rather.
Okay, the NDC, it's only 4 people,
including the
John Mahama, Kojo Bonsu, Dr. Kwabena Dufour,
and then someone else,
one other person, yes, in case who may pop up.
So in that instance, you would find that all the people will having 4 choices to make. I mean, to choose from 4 people.
Yeah, but in the case of the NPP, they are like
well
8.
over 8 or 9 people.
So it splits the numbers more.
And one wonders why or on what basis you pick the 9 for the MPP and just a few for NDC. If it's based on history, at least we know other people who had eyes on the NDC flag bearership. We know the likes of Professor Alabi, we know Spio Gabra, and quite a number of people. So why didn't those people make it into that list?
It's because they haven't fully declared. A lot of the people
But all of these people haven't fully declared in the strict sense of full declaration.
But to be honest, so that is the thing. They've hinted,
yes,
and their actions demonstrate that more than what they've said or put on paper.
So that could have been clarified, just so we don't have this kind of confusion about you using few here and using a lot of numbers there. And that, in essence, would affect how much of a margin we are discussing now. Because Mahama is the only constant here, because when you look at the numbers, he seems to have an overwhelming majority. And it's a good argument to make that he has that majority because of the fewer numbers in his competition, unlike the case of Alan and then Bawumia.
Okay.
So he makes very good points when it comes to those things that he pointed out.
Okay, let's speak to Dr. Kobi Mensah. He's a lecturer in marketing at the University of Ghana Business School and also a strategist in political communication and strategy as well. So, Dr. Mensah, thanks for speaking with us. First, we've spoken with Dr. Kabiru Mahama, who is a economic policy analyst at the Office of the Vice President. He has downplayed this research by the Global Info Analytics. He says there are technical flaws in the methodology. He says that using convenience sampling automatically means that you can't do random sampling. And then he also complained about the control for the sample size as well, among other things, that there are no delegates currently for the NPP race, and so purporting to have spoken to some people who would decide or give a view of whether it's Bawumia or Alan as flawed. Do you see those same flaws?
Because thanks for having me, and thanks for pairing me up with these honorable people. First of all, let me say that I agree with Dr. Mahama completely. I have read the report, and I think that there were complete methodological flaws in them. Obviously, the context is completely different. If you're actually doing a poll with regards to the selection of a presidential candidate within the parties, you could actually do a delegate one, or you do a completely what we call popular votes, i.e. the voters, and then kind of diverse the two issues completely, but mixing them, I think it makes it much more problematic. I think that the sampling in the methodology, as he highlighted, I fully agree. You couldn't actually talk about the confidence interval with that kind of calculation that they did in the report. So I firmly agree with him that it was poorly done, it was poorly conducted. But of course, the issues at play could have been, analyzed, or could have been actually posed in a very, sane manner, if that is what they wanted to achieve.
Okay.
They probably could have actually separated the issues. If they couldn't have a delegate, database to poll the delegates, they could poll entirely, the voters without necessarily referring it or making it as a reflection of the delegates in the position. You could actually poll the general, public, and to say that, well, if these were the heads or the leaders of the party, this is how people would have voted for them. That's a completely different question, a completely different, conversation. But the manner that they did in making sure that they conflate both issues, I think, is poorly done.
But the question raised, though, is there's been no decision made in terms of who leads what or where? So if you even ignore the bit about having delegates deciding who becomes a flag bearer or not, at least they try and separate things. They try and ask certain questions. For instance, if it was John Mahama or if it was Bawumia, what would your answer be? And then they do a separate one if it was John Mahama, if it was Alan Tremantin. So they try and do that separation, acknowledging the fact that it's a two-horse race in the NPP, but more likely a single-horse race in the NDC.
Now, I can understand what you mean, but you see, you're actually asking people to answer a trail of questions. Remember that you're not there to explain to people whether this is actually in reference to purely a delegate question or would have been a general election question. So that's what I'm saying, that you could have actually split the cases into two, run two separate polls. One actually demonstrate delegate choices. One actually demonstrate the voters' choices, but with reference to a general election, for example, to say that if it were Bawumia to head the NPP in the general election, who are you going to vote for? If it was, Bawumia to head, the NPP, who are you going to vote for? And Alan Tremantin versus Mahama, who are you going to vote for? That's a completely different story as well. But to conflate these two in one poll, I think is problematic because it's then going to lead on people, and the findings will be questionable as others actually question it. But I think that it's a lesson. Obviously, the pollsters who actually conducted it may want to be very, very rigorous in terms of the methodology, in order that we wouldn't actually cut out on them. But clearly, this is not worth, analyzing, to be honest with you.
Okay, but in spite of that, it seems interesting that Dr. Bawumia, according to the sample they gathered, seemed to be doing quite well. Things seem to have changed in this 1 quarter in favor of Dr. Bawumia. It also shows that the numbers between the two individuals remain very close. Any lessons, at least, that should be picked up by both camps on that score?
Well, of course, there's a fixation and there's a certain perception of Dr. Bawumia's dominance when it comes to economic issues. So very well, when you ask people, they'll definitely give that to him in terms of his understanding of economic matters. Whether that can actually translate into delivery, that's a completely different issue. But I'm actually saying that, of course, if you're actually putting up a sample, let it be very much clear in terms of who you're sampling, what issues are you sampling on, in order not to actually conflate the issues. When you make the issues complicated, we can analyze it. If you want to analyze, we can analyze it, barring the methodological flaws. But when you're putting questions before respondents, mind you, you have actually kind of chosen the kind of questions you're asking. You probably wouldn't be there to explain to them, where they find difficulties. So you want to make it as clear as possible in order that they could have a very, a clear mind and clear positions in responding to them. But as I said, yes, there are, various strengths of the various candidates that they've actually put together, and that would definitely reflect, in the sampling and in the response. But I think that the complexity or otherwise of the research question also play a role, and so it would be good to be able to tell what exactly the framing of the questions were, and how and how that actually influenced a respondent. The kind of response that a respondent actually gave would also be crucial in the analysis as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kobe Mensah there. So it seems that certainly no joy for Global Info Analytics, Dennis. But I'm not sure about just dismissing everything because they feel in terms of the sample size, it doesn't meet a certain number, which Dr. Kabir puts at 16,500, concerns that the technical procedures are flawed. I think the fundamental question is that there's a certain pattern and it has changed.
Yes.
And the strategists within these two sides need to look at it.
Yes.
And probably know what they may be facing off against. That's the way, one would also expect to look at it.
Exactly. So that's originally should be the intention of the researchers. I mean, the global info analytics team. But from the point of these researchers who have pointed out the fundamental flaws, they do not think that we should take the information put out
even
serious,
further,
because they think that right from the word go, they got a few things wrong, for which reason the data or the information put out cannot be trusted. But I think because this is a tracking poll, it's going to they are going to continue with it. So I think it's important that they put all this feedback into consideration when they are doing a subsequent one. I'm very sure this is at the end of the first quarter. Likely at the second of the second quarter, they will release another statement, and that should reflect some of the things that, or if not, they will just have to start from scratch again, get all the things right, so that the research questions being asked will elicit the kind of responses that they want, and it will help the parties. But beyond that, this is a time that we're having polls upon polls upon polls. This will not be the last one.
This will not be the last.
I can imagine there will be a next one coming.
Dr. Kabir references an IEA one. We have to go and find it
too. And if that comes up, there will always be a critique. Every research can be criticized, but it depends on how much of a critique and how much that flaw alleged affects the quality of the data.
All right.
But then they need to also get onto the ground and do their own works. They should be telling us what numbers they are getting.
Now, they are not delegates yet, so they can't tell you. So.
No, but of course, they should be doing their own assessment. The Baumia camp should tell us what they are thinking. The Alan camp, the Mahama, the
Akoto camp and all that. Yeah. So anyway, it's going to be an interesting time the next 2 years. Yeah. Thanks very much, Dennis Gbeho-Bampoh, for bringing us some perspectives as well. Many thanks to Dr. Kabir Mahama, Economic Policy Analyst with the Office of the Vice President, and Dr. Kobe Mensah, who is a political marketing strategist lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. We take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Eye Care and Vision Center is here with all your eye care solutions. Yes, Third Eye Care is at it again. Are your lenses becoming foggy because of wearing face masks or sitting in air-conditioned spaces? Are your eyes getting sore and tired after using the computer for prolonged periods? Are you struggling with light from oncoming cars and other vehicles when driving at night? Worry no more. Third Eye Care and Vision Center has all the right solutions for you. We have anti-fog and blue filtering lenses that solves it all. Third Eye Care and Vision Center also stocks all types of lenses, designer frames, sunglasses, and employs very well-trained, qualified, and licensed optometrists to provide all your eye care needs. Locate us at Airport Residential Area, close to the Association International School, opposite Mirage Residence, or Northridge, on the premises of Sunny FM, and close to the Kanda Overhead Bridge. Our working hours are Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Call us on 054-328-7008 or 026-646-2080. Please do well to observe all COVID-19 protocols. Third Eye Care and Vision Center, your total eye care solutions provider.
Have you been told you have abnormal hormonal levels? What is your ovulation like? Have you been experiencing irregular and painful menstruation? If you have any of the above issues, then Fertiza Plus Tab is the best choice for you. Fertiza Plus Tab is a natural food supplement specifically designed and helpful in balancing female hormonal levels, boosting ovulation, management of irregular and painful menstruation, maintaining female health vitality. For bulk purchase, contact Zoe Fertility and Alternative Medical Center at Adenta New Site behind the CAF International School on the Adenta Panton Junction Road or Odoko Terazu Road near the Nicolosi Hotel. Contact Zoe Fertility on 020-536-3614 or 0243-239534. Zoe, excellent healthcare, our hallmark. This advertisement is FDA approved.
Come and set us free. Holy Spirit, come and fill this place.
3FM 90.
Thank Thank you very much for staying with us here on 3FM 92.7. And we move on to our next segment because it seems government's reneging on its commitment to provide feeding allowances for teacher trainees and colleges, which depend on a percentage of those allowances to feed the students, has come full circle. Now, a statement from principals of colleges of education, Ghana, Prinkov, has directed that from 8th of May, teacher trainees in education colleges across the country will have to feed themselves. Now, the issue hasn't gone down well with the teacher trainees and their principals, who are now unsure about what happens next. But let me read a letter that was issued. It was signed by the executive secretary of the principals for colleges, and it's signed by Dr. Harriet Amui. And it's a letter to the Minister of Education from the National Conference of Principals of Colleges and Education, Ghana. Says the Conference of Principals and Colleges of Education, Prinkov, has for a couple of months been inundated with complaints from suppliers about the inability of colleges of education to make payments for food items supplied. Now, in spite of the fact that prices of food items have gone up, and a request from Prinkov for an upward review of students' feeding fees payable to principals has not been approved yet, Prinkov has still managed to provide some quality meals 3 times a day for students. Now, it's come to a point where suppliers have backed their threats of not supplying any food items to colleges with a concrete action by not supplying colleges with any food items until they've been paid monies owed them. Now, most colleges will now have food items that can last only 1 week if students are provided with 3 meals a day. And so to this end, in order that the 2021-2022 academic year, which is already tight, is not disrupted, Prinkov has come up with the following feeding schedule below to keep the students on campus. So the teacher trainees will be provided 2 meals, breakfast and supper, only for a week. That's from April 23rd to April 30th. So in the next 2 days, that will start. Now, after April 30th, teacher trainees will now get only lunch from the 1st of May to the 8th of May. And after 8th of May, teacher trainees will have to provide their own meals until feeding allowances have been paid. Food vendors will be encouraged to increase the quantity of daily meals they cook for sale to the students. So today, the Association of Teacher Trainees has been speaking with my colleague, Alfred Okanse. Jonathan Ginu is concerned about the situation and says that students just simply don't have the money to pay for their own meals.
We are not happy at all. And I must say that we are not in support of this measures that Prinkov is ruling out. Yes, we understand the fact that they are also in a situation, and for them, that's the best way they can handle the issue. But at our end, we do not agree. Because where would the students get the money from? If you are saying you are going to give them breakfast and lunch, where would they get supper? If you are giving them only lunch, where would they get breakfast and supper? So from A, they would have to feed themselves. Where would they get the money from? This is the question. Because allowances have not been paid.
Your allowances have not been paid?
Yes.
How many months?
7 months in arrears now.
3FM 92.7.
2021, 2022, 3 months. So if you're asking the students to go and feed themselves, ask yourself, where would they get the money from? And on the issue of saying they will entreat the food vendors to increase the quantity, that one is something that we shouldn't even talk about. Because you can't go and tell the food vendors that they should increase their food. Even if they agree to do that, the student must first give the money. And the money is not there. You see, I keep saying this, that this issue is not handled well, and the students are sent to the campuses, and then these measures are rolled out. There will be a threat because you are sending over 10,000 students to the various campuses, and they are going there to get staffed. And don't forget, a hungry man is an angry man. This issue must be handled carefully so that we don't get to a stage where we would have to be running to find solutions. Let's solve it right now. Leadership should be seen right from here. That is our plea. We are rolling out measures to meet the Ministry of Education. We are initiating to meet them. And it's our hope that when we meet them, solutions will be provided as early as possible.
So you're saying that you expect leadership to be brought to bear at this point. What are you asking your principals to do in a situation like this, contrary to what they have proposed?
For the principals, they are saying their hands are equally tied, just like the students. So the bar stops with government. The bar stops with government.
So you're going to meet the Ministry of Education?
That is, yes, that's what we're planning to do right now.
And when do you intend to do this?
We plan meeting them by Friday.
By Friday?
Yes.
The principals are saying that
92.7.
this directive is in response to the inability of the colleges, that's your colleges, to make payments for the food items supplied to them. Government hasn't released the money for them to pay the food suppliers. So there's practically nothing they can do.
That's what I'm saying, that the principals, their hands are equally tied. That's what they are saying. And it's, as a result of that, that's why they are coming out with this measure. I don't think they just stood up and say, okay, let's punish the students. No. It's because they are equally suffering. They are equally in that tight corner.
And that's Jonathan Jinu. He is a president of the Association of Teacher Trainees. He was speaking to my colleague Alfred Okanse on 3FM Sunrise. So fundamentally, it's about having access to a portion of the fees that are, or the allowance paid to the teacher trainees, out of which the principals of the colleges of education get a portion to feed the student. Now they can't do that. Well, students are yet to be formally communicated to about this feeding program, even though it's in this letter to the Ministry of Education. My colleague Richard Bright Addo has been speaking with the head of the Accra teacher, the principal of the Accra College of Education, Dr. Samo Atintonu, and he's been explaining why they are yet to inform the students about the feeding plan, even though it's out there already.
It's gotten to a point that it's becoming very difficult for all principals to feed them. So it's on that basis that our president, Hope, Dr. Yamiche, who you probably have spoken to earlier, all of us have sent an appeal to the minister and followed up with another letter that going forward beyond
3FM 92.7.
So we sent an appeal that it should be paid immediately to avoid a situation where we may have to reduce or ration the meals for them. With breakfast and they can get supper, and at a point 1 meal, then we may eventually have to find a way out if government doesn't come to our aid. So that's the basis for it.
When are you hoping to communicate this to your trainees, the teachers here? Because this any directive.
Well, we are appealing to Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, that's GTEC, who are a regulatory body, and through them to the Minister of Education, and of course to the Minister of Finance for the feeding grant to be released. So we have not communicated anything yet to them. Yeah. Hoping that this will be addressed to avert what we are thinking of.
All right, so in the absence of the feeding grants, currently, how are you feeding the students?
That's a very interesting question. It's a very fundamental question, and every principal is just managing whatever small IGF we have. We manage to use it, but it's not sufficient and it's not intended for that. So that's where the challenge is.
All right, so you talk of the internally generated fund, but also we have picked up information that you are using the teacher trainees allowances to be able to feed them. How true is this?
No. I think we must understand this. Yes, the teacher trainee allowances is 400 cedis. So 200 cedis is given to the teacher trainees and 200 given to the college principals to feed them. Now, the component that is meant for the feeding, which is supposed to be given to the principal, has not been given. So that's where we are. So it's not the case that the money has come, we are using it. It is the case that it hasn't been paid. The part that comes to the principal is the 200 which we used to feed them per month.
3FM
and then another 200 for them
92.7.
But none of them has been paid.
All right.
Yeah.
So, lastly, so now the students are worried that come 1st May or the next week, I mean, we have only 1 week, to be able to do this. If that doesn't happen, is there an alternative arrangement you have for the students here? Or
I think for now, what the communication are going, I want to believe that government will respond swiftly, and I don't want to preempt that come first May this issue wouldn't have been resolved. So we are hopeful and confident that these things will be resolved, so we don't get to it. Because for this academic year, the students are here till December. All the time they have to be there and they have to be fed.
Do you anticipate closing down the school if it has to?
I do not have that capacity now to say so. If it gets to that point, it's the minister who will appeal to. Principal can close the school.
Thank you very much.
All right, and that's our colleague Richard Bright Addo there speaking to Dr. Samuel Atintonu, who is the principal of the Accra College of Education. And we are learning that the Ministry of Education is having a press conference on this matter, but we'll get details of that in our subsequent bulletins. But let's speak to the president of Prinkoff. Let's speak to Dr. Nyameche, who joins us live. Good afternoon, Dr. Nyameche.
Good afternoon, madam.
Great. My name is Dzifa, so you can call me Dzifa.
Dzifa?
Yes. So
I didn't recognize the voice.
That's okay, sir. So, I mean, things are looking a bit difficult for our teacher trainees and for our colleges and the principals who manage them. Is it a certainty that starting in 2 days, the feeding ration will start? There's nothing.
Sorry.
No, I was saying that. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Initially, that was the thinking, but now things have changed, and then we are not likely to get there.
When you say things have changed and we are not likely to get there, what's changed in the last hours?
Yeah, we have had assurances from officials, and every indication is that we're going to get the money as soon as possible.
One of the concerns is for your suppliers.
Yes.
What is the negotiation with them then? Because ultimately, if they don't provide supplies because they haven't got resources, then you still remain in difficulty.
Yeah, I have just indicated that assurances have been given that we would get the money. And once we get the money, we would pay our suppliers. And they are business people. Once they get their money, they will continue to supply.
What about another option like the Ghana Food Buffer Stock Company? Is that also what they can do for the colleges of education? Is that under consideration?
Yeah, that is an idea we could explore. But for now, we aren't there yet with the buffer stock. So what we are concerned with at the moment is for us to sort out our suppliers so they continue to give us the food items that we need, so as to enable us to feed our students 3 times a day, every day when they are in school.
The teacher trainees say they are owed up to 6 months. Is that the same for the colleges of education?
It's very possible, except that 2 different groups deal with the students' allowance and then the feeding fees that come to us. So I am unable to speak for the students, except that I have heard them say that they haven't been paid. But normally when they are paid, they don't come to inform us because the money goes directly to them.
Certainly, once your needs have been met, there are no more complaints. What's your final word to those concerned about the situation the colleges find themselves in? What could be a long-term solution?
For now, I think I wouldn't discount the importance of the allowances that are paid to our students. They need it. But then what should happen for me is that they should continue to receive the allowance. But then the feeding bit, if the students could be made to pay for feeding and then the money given to them anytime it's ready, that is the degree fund, then I'm sure that it will help everybody and calm nerves.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Nyamiche. Much appreciated that you made a little time for us on First Take this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
And Dr. Nyamiche is the president of Prinkov there. He was telling us that they've received assurances that the monies will be paid. So we'll be watching the space to see if the rationing will start from the 23rd of April. Dr. Nyamiche is telling us there might be no need for that. So we'll keep watching that space. And that's how we end our show this afternoon. So I want to say thanks to Cyril Dogbe, Collins Esuman, many thanks to Dela, our in-studio technical producer, and to Selwyn Ofori for social media management. I'm Dzifa Gbeho-Bampoh. Thank you for making some time for us here on 3FM's First Take. We're back here again tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I beg your pardon, at 2 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, of course, up next is the 3FM Drive with the number one DJ for 2021, DJ Faculty.